So good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
I have a quick question because as I will be basically very much in charge of the timing here. How much time do we have now? Because we are starting 20 minutes later.
So I would say that we just be flexible at the beginning because we want to give Paul the opportunity to contribute and he's in New York right now and is engaging in kind of other work activities and was kind enough to participate. So perhaps we should privilege Paul's contribution. And then I will follow up on him, and then we'll follow the schedule.
Okay, so I'll briefly introduce, but then Francesco Grillo will speak very briefly, and then Paul, and then you.
Yes.
Francesco Lapenta. Yeah.
Yes.
Does it sound good, Paul? Are you're nodding?
No.
No, it doesn't sound good.
My problem is I leave at 12:30, but up to you. I mean, you know,
Okay,
at 12:30 sharp, I leave.
Okay, so basically I won't do much introductions. I will just say, here we are. I'll give you the floor, Paul, and then we go with Francesco Grillo and then Francesco Lapenta.
Okay.
Oh,
Yep.
sorry. Could I know when I intervene, please?
Yes, your intervention is meant to go, it was meant to go after Paul, but now can you manage to wait for a very brief introduction by Francesco Grillo and then Francesco Lapenta? So it would be in around half an hour or 20 minutes?
Yes. So Paul, Francesco, and then myself. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Is this going to be recorded?
Well, we record it from now, but let's see what we do with the recording. So don't worry about it.
Oh, okay. Okay. So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So we can start at any time. Well, it's wonderful to meet at this point in time to discuss our common AI future, the European way. And this is a very timely moment. We have all seen the recent debates that have been sparked by generative technology based on AI as ChatGPT in December. And this has meant that for the ordinary citizen reading a newspaper around the world, AI has become part of the everyday agenda these days. And it is a wonderful moment to discuss this future that Francesco Lapenta has sketched in his book that came about already over a year ago, but it's a wonderful time to be discussing this. And I will give the floor, the first minutes of this conversation, this discussion, this roundtable that we are proposing here today to Paul Nemitz. Well, everyone knows Paul, but just for the records, Paul is Principal Advisor in the Directorate General for Justice and Consumers of the European Commission. And you have the first introductory comments to develop your ideas around what this common AI future entails and what would the European way be in this context. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you very much for the friendly introduction and the invitation. And thank you for Francesco and congratulations for his book, which is very timely because indeed, this is a technology, AI, which is a global technology. It's a global challenge, therefore, to develop the rules according to which this technology works in such a way that democracy, fundamental rights, and the rule of law have a meaning also in the age of artificial intelligence. So let me say in Europe, we are putting in place a law which will set out the rules according to which artificial intelligence has to work. It's very important to have a law as distinct from ethics. A law has democratic legitimacy. A law can be enforced against everyone, including the big corporations who put AI on the market. And I think this AI Act, as it is called, will be the first example, and I'm sure it will inspire many. Let me say by conclusion on my thoughts here. It's very important that artificial intelligence, wherever it exercises an activity which humans could also exercise or have exercised before, that it complies with all the rules which are important for humans. Now let's take GPT-3 as an example. If you ask a scientific question to GPT-3, you get a scientific answer, which sounds great, but it contains no footnotes. It doesn't give us the sources. We expect every scientist who writes a scientific or philosophical text to tell us where he or she has got the ideas from. GPT-3 is not doing this. And that's where it starts. That's where I think we have to say, look, if you put out a program like this, well, you know, every human scientist who produces such a text of scientific nature or which sounds scientific has to footnote it and give the sources. And that's what we should be asking from a GPT-3 and its producers, in addition to full compliance with all the rules of the AI Act once it's in place, and I expect it to be in place within a few months from now, and of course all the rules which would apply to humans to the context in which AI or GPT-3 concretely then is used. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. We will come back to your reflections, and even though you may leave soon, I will now provide a brief introduction about this seminar and all the discussions that are involved here. So this seminar, Our Common AI Future, the European Way, what is AI after all, how can we regulate it, and is there a way to steer it towards a common good, other challenges that we will be addressing today. And after this very introductory remarks and your setting a path forward from a very strong European standpoint, as Paul Nemitz has just laid out. I mean, Europe will be leading the way in the regulation of AI, and the rest of the world will be looking at it, and we can expect a lot of changes in the regulatory landscape of many other countries from a global perspective, which is what Francesco Lapenta's book is also aiming at, discussing what are the global implications of a technology that is frontierless and can bypass jurisdictions as other previous digital technologies have. So with this in mind, I will provide a couple of minutes to Francesco Grillo, the director of Vision think tank and a visiting fellow at the European University Institute, to provide just an introduction about the project that you're developing with John Cabot University and Professor Francesco Lapenta. And then it'll be Francesco Lapenta's words, time to develop his own words about his book a year on and how he sees these challenges emerging. Francesco Grillo, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. This is an experiment of artificial intelligence. Can you hold on a second? Okay, now better. Okay. So thank you very much, Carolina. Ciao, Paul. Thanks, Francesco, for your book, which gives us the opportunity to introduce the work that the Vision is doing on regulation of digital technologies, which is a wider, let's say, notion of artificial intelligence. And yes, this is a sort of experiment, because this presentation is part of the Next Generation series, which is a series of seminars that the Vision has been carrying out for a couple of years now. That is the first time that we could jointly with John Cabot University. The idea is to have as a starting point Francesco book on our artificial intelligence common future. Some food for thoughts on one of the pillars of our conference of the future of Europe, which will take place in Siena in May. And Paul is not here any longer, very much one of the participants. One of the objectives of that conference will be to produce some recommendation on the regulation of digital technologies. So this is a good opportunity to start thinking about that. Let me very quickly phrase the three questions that we propose to Francesco on the basis of his book. The three questions are: number one, what is artificial intelligence about, after all, which is a very big question. Paul gave his interpretation, talking about GPT, chat. I may probably say that I get a slightly different opinion. This is the first question for Francesco. The second question is, does it make sense to try to regulate such a thing as an artificial intelligence? And the third question is there any way to steer artificial intelligence towards the needs of human mankind? And for some reason, when I think to all of these three questions, for some reason, I very much think about Isaac Asimov. And so the overall question for Francesco, for you, is more intelligent the way the European Union try to regulate artificial intelligence, or the three famous laws Isaac Asimov about trying to tame artificial intelligence towards our community?
All right. So first of all, thank you everybody for participating. You might see the room for the ones that are connected remotely. So just to give you a little bit of context, Francesco Grillo has been coordinating this initiative about the future of Europe. And what we share, being both directors of similar projects, is an understanding of the future that is very much based on the idea of being able to control and influence how the future develops. Now, one of the things that I constantly get asked is, what does it mean to work for an institute that works for the future? Are you reading a glass ball and trying to read what the future is? And the reality is a lot more pragmatic, it's a lot more simple. One of the key premises of the book is that the future, while uncertain and open, is not arbitrary. Rather, it is the result of a complex set of forces that have been shaped by history that are competing with one another. And what is interesting is that of these forces and these initiatives and these cultural movements and this evolution that is reached as status quo crystallized in the present, these forces have a certain momentum. They work one together with the other, sometimes against one another. And what is interesting sometimes is to trace initiatives that might be very small at the moment, or they may have started in the recent past, and they can gain momentum to drive this evolution of the future. So it's a constructive way of looking at the forces that exist today, how they've been shaped in the past, what momentum they have, and how you can intersect with the trajectory of this specific evolution. Now, when I specifically engaged, I 2 years ago, the project of our common future, when I specifically engaged with that project, it was kind of interesting because I started to be interested in artificial intelligence probably 32 years ago, when I read Isaac Asimov's book I wrote. Then 10 years ago, I went to around the world in laboratories to try to see what the state of AI was at the time in Japan, in the States. It wasn't very much part of the popular discourse at the time. That's 10 years ago. Then what we have seen in the past few years is an acceleration, this momentum that I've been describing. There's a picking up in the elaboration of artificial intelligence, both as a technical problem but also, and more importantly, as a quandary, as a question for society to articulate what the purpose of artificial intelligence is. So the book, Our Common Future, is based on one of these old initiatives that has a big momentum, that is called Our Common Future. This is the first report that was written by the United Nations in 1987, where the word sustainability is for the first time presented and described. And that key document has been at the basis of a lot of other documents, including the Kyoto Agreement, the Paris Agreement, the whole discussion about sustainability, the whole discussion about climate change, and more importantly, the sustainability goals that have been discussed recently by the United Nations. So, why is it? It's a kind of it's a reference to that specific initiative that is somewhat small compared to all the history of technology and how it's influencing our lives, but it's acknowledging a problem. What is the purpose of technology? I mean, what kind of problems that technology is supposed to solve for us? And what specifically artificial intelligence is supposed to do for humanity? So one of the key things that we have to keep in mind is that technology as we know it, if we look in terms of direction, is being really built in a very competitive terms since the First and Second World War. Technology is not seen as neutral. Technology is seen as a means of global leadership and global domination, for some people. Since the First and Second World War, it was established a paradigm that whoever dominated the cycles of technological innovation would have a strong leadership or strong influence on the others that would follow trying to adopt that technology. It's a very virtuous system. You create very advanced technologies that the world depends upon, relying upon this technology, creating an ingrid of control over the future. That's what I call govern the future, lead the world. It's one of the first chapters in my book. So we have experienced many phases already in which we can see how domination in technological innovation has brought some societies to have some form of control over the resources all over the world. And these resources have been banned, these national interests that have been led by technological innovation that was mostly designed for a minority. So you had a minority of people that designed very advanced technology that were slowly using resources that were shared by the entire planet, but for the purpose and the sake of a minority of the people in the world. So this is a vicious paradigm that has proved perilous for humanity and that is now being challenged in many possible ways, politically, technologically. Now there's a problem of how do we evolve? How do we create green economy? How do we create an alternative energy system where everybody can profit from the link between social, economical evolution and energy consumption? The two things are connected. You have one part of humanity that uses all the resources of the planet for the advantage of the few. How do we create an alternative to that? Now, more importantly, the question with artificial intelligence is why do we need artificial intelligence? What is the purpose of artificial intelligence? Is it going to be designed again, yet as another tool of, let's say, world domination? So a very few people, few entities, few organizations that are controlling the entire ecosystem, transforming data into a form of capital. We have seen how the division of power, economic power and energy is being skewed towards a smaller and smaller minority. You get people that are getting richer and richer, and the gap between rich and poor is increasing enormously, and technology is partly responsible for that. Now, the problem with artificial intelligence is that it could exacerbate this evolution. Now, there's some forces in the world that want to go in a different direction. They want to have an artificial intelligence that is there for the common good, that is not for the minority, but is for the broad majority, for the whole of humanity. So a lot of fundamental questions are asked about artificial intelligence in terms of what kind of systems do they represent, who do they empower, what are they doing for solving the problems of humanity in general. So one of the reasons why we were talking about the definition is because if you think about the future, it's very important to understand that future vision have an incredible, powerful, real effect. When JFK talked about the man going on the moon, it wasn't so much about the technical challenge of going on the moon, it was the ability to project, the ability to shape the future, to understand what to do with the future. So some of the things that were discussed, for example, at the conference with Francesco, was exactly what kind of futures do we envision? How do we create competing visions of the future that are allowing more people to interact and to take advantage of it? So one of the key problems for me is the definition of artificial intelligence. Now, definitions are very powerful cultural concepts, right? When you define something, when you define a scope for something, you will have an entire system that will go in a certain direction. So asking the question is very many times the first step in an incredibly momentous transformation that then it's going to be very difficult to solve. So this is why we were discussing what is the definition of artificial intelligence. That's very strange, competing definition of artificial intelligence. So until recently, we were stuck in a sort of, let's say, neutral definition of artificial intelligence. It was very difficult to explain to most people what artificial intelligence was, because most times people didn't have a direct experience of artificial intelligence. There was marketing of tools that were designed as artificial intelligence, but little experience of artificial intelligence. A minority was actually very much aware of what artificial intelligence was really about. Now, ChatGPT is incredibly important because it's creating the first shared by millions opportunity to really test what these artificial intelligence systems we've been talking about now for years are really about. Now, I hope that many of you are both excited and scared by what they represent. Now, my definition of artificial intelligence, which is based on this idea of trying to understand, and I'm going to conclude with this because then we can continue a little bit about the conversation after the contribution. So one of the key questions I ask is, why do we need artificial intelligence? Is it the goal of artificial intelligence development simply to replace human with automated machines for labor, decision-making, interaction? And what should the scope of this evolution be? The hypothesis of human-like identity for AI raises not only fundamental ethical quandaries, legal status of intelligence, machines, and artificial moral agents, but also calls into question the possibility, desirability, or necessity of human-like AIs. Do we really need to create something that is imitating the human intelligence, or that is competing with the human intelligence? What's the purpose of creating that kind of artificial intelligence? The idea of having a superhuman identity, a super AI, a strong or general AI, as it is called, is perhaps the most frightening and the one full of the bigger ethical and existential risks, in my view. I have an hypothesis of artificial intelligence as something different. So a human-centric definition of artificial intelligence inspired by the ethical elaboration and also the technical elaborations that have been done, mostly led by Europe on human-centric AI systems. Now, the core understanding of the effort that has been led by Europe was to understand that artificial intelligence should be designed to be human-centric. And very many times it's misunderstood. What does it mean human-centric? It's not a form of centrism, like disregarding the planet, disregarding other forms of life. It means that it needs to be based on humanity to enhance our human qualities. So a definition, a more holistic definition of human-centric hypothesis and approach to artificial intelligence places humanity, the human moral primacy in the machine-human relation, squarely at the center of this evolution. So human-centric AI is something that questions the relation of AI with humanity as the centerpiece of the reflection. So viewing the machine learning applications first and the AI system foremost as tools that must be designed for the emancipation of humanity the enhancement of human values, and the enrichment of our individual and collective, cognitive, and collaborative abilities and qualities. I have an idea of artificial intelligence as a tool, a technological tool that enhances humanity, a form of augmented human, a form of augmented humanity, where the relation between machine and humanity, led by the moral compass of humanity, is there to expand our capacity to interact with each other, to interact with knowledge, to interact with data. According to this alternative interpretation, AI systems, human-like qualities, are designed to function as rich and empathic interfaces that do not replace, but rather expand and enhance the realm of possibilities for human interaction, empathy, individual and collective creativity and intelligence, problem solving, individual experiences, and crowd wisdom and human agencies and values. What I mean by that artificial intelligence has an incredible potential. AI is capable of manipulating vast quantities of data that our brain cannot capture in its entirety. So the ability of AI to process these informations and transform them into something that we can empathically relate to, so transforming the information to allow us to be cognitively expanding our horizons and form of interactions and speculation and innovation, all human qualities at the center. I believe that that's the ultimate definition, that should be the definition of and the development of artificial intelligence. Because the alternative of simply replacing human labor, human activities by a clone of artificial intelligence of humans, to me, it should be illegal. Now, this is something I've been reflecting upon strongly, and I'm going to close with that. I do believe that any argument that is transforming or is talking about artificial intelligence as a form of innovation that should lead to a form of consciousness, a machine consciousness, or something that imitates humanity, should be treated in the same way as cloning of humans has been treated by governments around the world and by the scientific community. There should be the same level of scrutiny, there should be the same level of regulation, there should be the same level of restrictions that is being set upon cloning. Now, cloning of humans is a very controversial topic. It's very complicated to talk about cloning of humans. There's applications that are seen as productive for the emancipation of humanity, the cure diseases and whatnot. But the general agreement is that we should not clone humanity. We should not create a clone of a human being. In my mind, artificial intelligence and any discussion that tends to define artificial intelligence as something that has not only augmented abilities, but something that discusses a possible consciousness for artificial intelligence. So an independence from the human should be noticed. While the focus should be on articulating all the potential that artificial intelligence might have to solve all the human problems that are related to health, human rights, access to information, access to education, access to energy, all the complex questions that science should solve for humanities. So the book, in conclusion, is a very pragmatic roadmap that tries to offer an alternative vision to a simple capitalist interpretation of artificial intelligence, simply replacing forms of labor with a form of machine labor, but a more humanist and holistic view of what artificial intelligence is supposed to be doing for humanity. Thank you.
Thank you, Francesco. This was a very comprehensive reflection upon your book and on issues that we are seeing, that we have seen in the past months. Is very thorny debates in the evolution of the draft of the EU AI Act, including the definition of what is artificial intelligence. And if we are, I'm not saying that there should be now at this stage a human global consensus around that, but it is definitely one of the things we have to come to terms with, and that it is that the struggle around the semantics, it's not the meaning is not just a semantic exercise. It's about exactly the future of where and why we want to use this technology. And with this, I want to give the floor to Valentine Goddard. And Valentine, it's really wonderful to have someone with your expertise in all the in different capacities, serving advisory boards at the United Nations and Canada, and also bringing in another perspective from another region, from one of the countries that has been at the peak of innovation, and not just of AI as such, but also of governance models and thinking about the steering of AI. Well, Valentine, for those of you who don't know her, she's a founder and executive director of AI Impact Alliance, founding president and general chair, and on AI on a social mission. Valentine, if you would like to take up some of your own ideas about the proposal of this seminar today, addressing any of the one, two, or both the three questions, or taking up some of Francesco's commentaries, you're most welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you, everyone. If I was sitting at the table, I would love to know who is there at the table, and have a chance to know what kind of background you're coming from. I give regular talks around the world. Sometimes the room is filled with AI engineers, sometimes it's policymakers, sometimes it's artists. So I'm used to approaching these topics from a number of different perspectives. So I don't know, I can sort of see you. So if you can put your hands up, who has legal background? History background? History, social science, mostly background? Yes, yes, yes. Political background? Technical background? Okay. Okay, so hopefully one day I will be in Italy with you, going to have pizza afterwards. Right now I'm in Canada. There's about 30 centimeters of snow outside. So I'm going to try and briefly answer the very straightforward questions. Well, sorry, I also want to thank Francesco for inviting me, and for the host for inviting me to participate today in discussing the book, Our Common AI Future. I think it's an excellent book, sets the ground for a number of policymakers around the world to understand the history of the geopolitical implications of AI, the race to power, to economic and military power that is leading a race mainly between two major countries, and now I'll call it a race to regulate AI in order to prevent the risks that it prevents, and a number of really important global discussions between different economic and political partners to make sure that data and digital economy partnerships are aligned towards shared goals, such as fighting climate change, ensuring food security, climate security, protecting human rights, and democracy around the world. So those are big, broad global efforts that are going on. So those three questions that I was asked before coming in is like, how would you define AI? How is Canada, so myself personally, or I don't speak for the Canadian government. I sit on the Canadian AI Advisory Council, and I'm invited to provide input and recommendations, but I do not speak for the Canadian government. So how would I define AI, and how is Canada's proposed legislation on the AI and data defining AI? Can AI, the second question was, can AI be regulated globally? Is it really possible? And if so, how? And 3, can we steer AI for the common good? So I'll try to answer that in the next 9-10 minutes. Very briefly, also as a general introduction, this is a quote that I've adapted from actually Amartya Sen, who's a Nobel Prize in economy, who was talking about the scope of advantage of any new technology. And in this case, we can say that the scope of advantage of AI will depend on the social political system that it is set in, as well as the environment, the investment policies in which AI systems are deployed. That has been guiding a lot of my reflections ever since I started working in this field, previously mostly, if I summarize my career, in human rights law. So Canada's proposed bill, for those of you who are curious, is Bill C-27, is current in second reading before the Parliament, proposes a risk management framework to prevent the risks, and sets clearly in the preamble to the proposed legislation privacy protection and human rights protection, respect of international regulations that are already in place and have been negotiated, and common shared goals such as sustainable development goals, which are not clearly, the SDGs are not underscored, but are present across all AI policies. As well as I invite you to have a look at the Indo-Pacific strategy, which is online on the Canadian government website, which, for example, identifies areas of collaboration between countries, such as climate change, biodiversity loss, global health, nuclear proliferation, access to critical minerals, and so on. Most of them focused on green economy, which is Canada's priority right now. So the definition that is included in Bill C-27, I'll read it literally, is a technological system that autonomously or partly autonomously processes data related to human activities through the use of a genetic algorithm, a neural network, machine learning, or other technique in order to generate content or make decisions, recommendations, or predictions. As you can see, this is a prevalent, overall, very broad, general definition of AI that can encompass older uses of what some would say is, this is not AI, this is just statistics. Well, statistics will be included in this definition, in the application of this definition. In Canada, that's important because we have Supreme Court decisions that refer to the use of highly statistical systems to prevent discrimination against Indigenous peoples, for example. So we need to be able to encompass previously decided human rights protecting decisions emanating from higher tribunals. And this decision allows that, even though technically some would argue that statistics is not part of AI. Also, this will cover future definitions of AI, such as general intelligence, and really this definition tends to avoid having a longer discussion on technically, is this AI or not? It doesn't really matter in this case. Is it a autonomously or partly autonomously processed data that is serving to generate content? Is it making decisions, helping humans make decisions, recommendations, or predictions? This is a very important, as Francesco was mentioning, step in the establishment of the rest of the law and the application of the rest of the law. Recently had panel discussion with experts in military law and international discussions in military law, meet friction points around the definition of AI because a narrow definition would exclude certain uses of AI in the military and autonomous weapons, making them acceptable and deployable. A general definition of AI, a larger, more encompassing definition of AI, such as this one, ensures that we limit the use of autonomous systems in military warfare. So the definition is extremely important for that matter. It protects human rights, encompasses older, future definitions of AI, and prevents the deployment of autonomous weapons. So moving on to the second question, is it possible to regulate globally? If possible, how? As I just ended with the example of negotiations, even between Canada and the US, on how we can define AI, meet such discussion points around because there's huge lobbying groups that will, of course, argue that they want to have a narrower definition of AI. There are also different political situations globally that will prevent the capacity of certain countries to regulate. That's why, in general, I advocate for collaborations between different countries who may or may not be able to adopt AI regulation, but put forward data collaborations, digital economy collaborations, impact assessment processes that help align the uses of AI for sustainable development, for the UN's 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Some countries will not align on all 17, obviously, so finding those areas of potential collaboration through cyber diplomacy discussions and data diplomacy discussions is very important. I will be coming back to that question further on, but I also want to zoom in on a couple points on how is it possible to steer that regulation and those partnerships towards sustainable development. I prepared a short written statement, so I'm sorry if I'll be reading just for a short little bit. Some of the thoughts I've had since the invitation were about and that came from reading this book, were about the race to extract as much value as we can from AI, be it economically or military, is a race to the bottom. The value-based AI race between 2 or 3 countries, China and the US, is affecting global peace and climate security. Sometimes I find that logic really needs to be brought back to this race is in itself having an impact on global peace and climate security as we race to secure access to critical minerals, for example. This is impacting everyone's future food security, climate security. The geopolitical alliances are walking on a fine line and risk aggregating into a self-destructive, disinformation-ridden competition to become leaders in AI. Investments in AI alone will not solve this situation. And a number of experts have voiced the importance of aligning national and multilateral AI collaborations to focus efforts towards the redemption of the value of democracy. But concrete efforts in this direction are lagging, in my humble opinion. So how do we achieve a better global alignment? I advocate that those who sit in privileged positions and hold decision-making power, whether it be in government or in industry, find the courage to be bold enough to support a creative and independent civil sector. When I refer to the civil sector, it is the third pillar of a democracy. It includes civil society organizations, mission-oriented nonprofit organizations. It includes social entrepreneurs and NGOs. We can talk about that during the discussion period, because I understand that there are a number of parameters that must be put around to ensure which ones are mission oriented and which ones really fit the bill in this respect. So finding the courage to be bold enough to support creative and independent civil sector, because civil and cultural organizations have a critical role to play in invigorating the trust in democratic processes and democratic institutions, which is at currently quite low. There's a low trust in technology, low trust in government. There's a disintegrating trust in in democracy right now. So we really need to focus on that aspect as well as we talk about AI. This involves changing policies on how AI is funded and putting in place strict rules to prevent lobbying in AI governance. It involves us asking questions such as, what are the key points of action of civil society organizations, of cultural leaders, and how can government, private sector sponsors better support them, let them have an independent narrative and voice, and strengthen their capacity? How can we rethink academic funding, which is minuscule compared to the funding that the private sector is receiving in the field of AI? However, my question is really around how can we rethink disciplinary silos in AI and social implications in academia to better preserve academia's independence and allyship with digital citizenry, with the civil sector in the fight for democracy? And what does this all mean in terms of data and digital economy partnerships? I have a slide that I can't really show you, but there's some funding in Canada, for example, a study that was done on where is the public funding going. And there was a 800 million that went for-profit organizations. 174 million went to non-profit organizations. However, out of that $174 million, 152 million went to a digital technology nonprofit, which is really not the same thing as a true civil society organization, which receives $0 in terms of being able to engage citizens whose trust they have, who understand the relevant uses of AI, who generally tend to strive for social, for human rights, for climate action, for diversity and inclusion, for Indigenous reconciliation, for example.
Valentine, if you could please wrap up in the next minute or two. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So I think that was just important to mention the funding, because if we're talking about how we can steer the regulation and the partnerships globally, funding models need to change. And that's at a more macro governmental level. In terms of academia, there's a very interesting paper called The Values Encoded in Machine Learning Research, with 100 highly cited machine learning papers. The highest ranked values in those papers that are accepted are performance, efficiency, simplicity, and compared to bias prevention, justice, non-maleficency, privacy rank the lowest. So there's a number of actions that need to be taken to be able to achieve those goals. And I'll stop there for now.
Thank you. That was a great provocation. Your last, I mean, the whole intervention was, I think it was very relevant to sort of frame the debates that are taking into consideration into Francesco's book, but I really like this tension that you've just presented right at the end concerning the participation of other non-traditional for-profit sectors, and in particular the tension that we're seeing these days between ethics washing on the one hand and all the international policy environment concerned with how ethically oriented human-centric AI should be developed, and on the other hand the actual practices and the and the rewards that industry involved in AI is taking. So I think this is an interesting, very interesting angle to pursue if we have time today as well, and also because it takes into account something that Francesco Lapenta's book raises, and which is the sustainability dimension, which is an enormous, I mean, as the idea of how and why should we envision a common AI future around AI. So I would like to leave the floor now to Francesco Grillo if you want to add some extra remarks, additional remarks from your original intervention. And I would also like the floor of participants, as Valentine invited you to already begin to interact with us. If you have any questions that you would like to pose from the room, or if there's any questions that if someone is shy or has connectivity issues and wants to send them via the chat, we will receive them, and we will then, after Francesco Grillo's intervention, we will look at them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Carmen. I think it's my turn. Unfortunately, when you talk about technologies are valid. Today we are having difficult problems with technologies here. Let me probably present a slightly different point of view on what we should do about artificial intelligence. Whereas I understand that your objective, Francesco, is to raise a debate and probably to aim for some solution. Solution probably is not the word, but I also have a very short presentation, 2 slides that I can probably show here. Well, first of all, introduction. Number one, I totally agree with all of you that we are talking about something which is very, very important. That we should be concerned about. There is a concept that futurologists define as a singularity. What is a singularity? Which is very, very relevant to artificial intelligence. Singularity is that point of technological progress where, let's say, computers learn how to program themselves, new computers, put it in a very simple way. At that point, the point of singularity, we lose control of the machine, of artificial intelligence. So that's, if you want, the real, to me, the real, this is not the definition of artificial intelligence around which philosophers have been exercising themselves probably since the time of Plato, in a sense. But that probably is the danger we want to be very concerned about, to lose control of the machine. Because at that very moment, the humans will really risk to extinction. So, but now, second question: what should we do about artificial intelligence, and more widely, what should we do with the internet? And more specifically, what is an institution like the European Union, of which we are all very much formed, is trying to do now. So, if we count the piece of legislation that have been produced by the European Union, they were talking both of proposal of regulation, of directives, and regulation which has then been approved by the European Council and the European Parliament, which therefore are laws, applied directly to the entire European Union. We are talking in the last 6 years of something like 10 pieces of legislation And we are talking about 726 pages and 563 articles. This chart was already projected into one of our events, a few months ago, and we keep counting, So we are talking about a really massive, effort of the European Union, okay? And the question, the rather pragmatic question is this the way to try to regulate, well, first of all, to make sense of what is happening? I think that the Artificial Intelligence, and more specifically the Artificial Intelligence Act, is, in a sense, the most interesting case from an intellectual point of view. From a business point of view, certainly the Digital Markets Act, the Digital Services Act are even more relevant, big. But artificial intelligence is particularly interesting as an attempt for a reason that Valentine already mentioned. So, Clara, if you go to not to this slide, but the next one, okay. I personally see three problems in that, rather, again, long and I would say rather detailed attempt to define and to regulate artificial intelligence. I mean, this is not the regulation proposed by the European Commission, because the latest is the proposal coming from the European Council. So first of all, the problem of definition. The definition that the European Commission and actually the European Council is now using as far as artificial intelligence goes is a little bit similar to the one that Valentine was referring to as far as Canada is concerned. Artificial intelligence system is a system that is designed to operate with elements of autonomy and infers how to achieve an objective and therefore produce prediction or recommendation of it. It is a very wide definition. What Francesco was saying before, we absolutely want to forbid cloning, is much more difficult if we want to forbid such a big thing, because it is such a regulate such a big thing. Because this definition most likely will apply just to give you a very, how can I say, even stupid example, Netflix. Netflix with some autonomy process information on your taste in terms of movies to achieve an objective which is about ranking the movies you would like to probably watch. So Netflix and artificial evidently Netflix is not artificial intelligence, but it's a very wide definition. And this is a problem. This is a very big problem. I am an economist, I'm not a lawyer. However, as a lawyer, very much, and lawmaker, very much should know, when you are about making a law, you must be very precise in your definition. Otherwise, your law will apply to everything. So that's a big problem. Second problem is what I call here the NIMBY boomerang effect. Here we are risking in Europe to forbid application practices that other countries will deploy. I'm not just talking about China. I'm just to put things very clearly. No, we're talking also about very normal places like Switzerland or even Canada. I mean, just give me let me give you two examples. It is prohibited. This is what the Article 5 of the regulation says. System that for the evaluation or classification of natural data, systems which are meant to evaluate or classify natural person over a certain period of time based on their social behavior. here the European Commission has in mind to forbid the social scoring system in China, okay, which is understandable. However, if you, again, you have such a wide definition, you can even go to the point that you forbid insurance to rank people on the basis of their behavior in terms of driving or drinking, which is a very legitimate thing to do. The more you drink, no, the more you should pay for insurance. Not something. It's we think, by the way, something which many insurance are already testing or doing for very legitimate purpose, also for your safety, no? Because if somebody drives and is drunk, it kills. Number two, the use of real-time remote biometric identification system in publicly accessible space. Again, very much we understand this, but we treat to be very wide. And to, for instance, forbid that we will arrive to a point, which is something that in China are already doing, which is about abolishing the gates to the underground, so that you are recognized through your biometric characteristic, and you pay, you know, any time, which is something that we may not like, but it is something which could also have some beneficial effects, you know, in terms of making people to go more quickly. Probably it's not the best example, but I'm saying if you have that kind of definition, you could also harm yourself. And I'm not just talking about losing competitive advantage. I'm also talking about, for instance, which is something which we should very much think about, sacrifice on the altar of privacy your right to health, you know, which is something which was very important during COVID. It was a trade-off. Number three, unintended over-regulation, and then I pass it to Francesco. Article 14 of the European Union regulation, high-risk AI system, high-risk is very wide definition, shall be designed and developed in such a way that there is always somebody who can control who is working on the artificial intelligence. So in other words, here the expectation is that yes, you can have an artificial intelligence driven machine, you know. However, there must be always somebody near the artificial, which means that the very purpose of artificial intelligence as a tool which can increase your productivity to go. You know, even you need always to if a self-driving car, okay, which is probably the future. And it's got many advantages, including the fact that when you will be in a self-driving car, not necessarily a Tesla, we will be able to do other things, not while the car is there. But if the expectation is that there must be always somebody controlling the self-driving car is not a self-driving car any longer. What do I want to say, going from a level of how can I say heavy pragmatism, not to the level of our reflection, which is more, if you want, on a higher intellectual level, not with Francesco. Is that the question of how do we regulate the future is there. And to me, this is my position. Very much I wanna also have your reaction of Valentine and of everybody. Also, George was about to say something. Probably here, this is also my provocation before who is more intelligent about artificial intelligence. We as European. I am part of this project of regulation. We as a European Union or is sarcasm, I don't know when he established those three very sharp and by the way short laws, not the three laws of the bodies. No, so my only modest suggestion would be, before we jump into regulation, let's think a little bit more with some vision, but also with a lot of practice. No, this is the thing. So let's also avoid absolutely rhetorics. We are not here talking about how beautiful is Europe and all this sort of thing. We are talking about our future, our society. So let's think more philosophically and pragmatically, and then let's try to act. This is not just about artificial intelligence. It's about more widely what we should do about the future. Number two, let's do it as globally as possible. Because if we retrain ourselves from some benefits of technologies, and not just China, but South Korea are doing those sort of things, A, we will impoverish ourselves, and B, we will not avoid the consequences of activity or climate change. So these things must be tackled globally. I know that we do not have a global governance institution, but if we do not work or organize some sort of global framework, we are doing things which may be either useless or even harmful to us.
Francesco, great.
Yeah, I'll be short because I want to also have the room.
Yes, I know we have a question from the floor.
Yeah.
Was it Giorgio who wanted to ask a question?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I share many of the concerns that Francesco has shown and has discussed before, but actually I have come to a conclusion, at least at the momentary conclusion, that maybe answering to one of the questions, it doesn't make any sense to regulate. And I explain to you my doubts. First, because time. We have seen the agenda of the European Commission. The last proposal of reform is from 2021, 2022, and they are still in discussion. The idea that you can be quick in getting the consensus of 27 different countries that have different political position, traditions and everything, it's very, very difficult to imagine that can be a very quick process. The second, precision of the law that Dr. Grillo was showing. Precision of law, it means that you are frozen certain type of condition, certain type of situation that have to be very precise. So they have to be very strict. Otherwise, you can use it in a difficult way when you come to the judiciary system. And this type of precision is really very difficult to obtain when there is a complex and very big variety of possibility. And you were showing only few of examples. There are many others. Third, when you come to the judiciary system, you have a problem of liability, you have a problem of control, and we do not have judiciary systems that at the moment are competent. We get to the point that they will be asking experts to get to the codes of the algorithm, and we will have cases that will last years without any type of decision, at least in Italy, may last 10, 15 years. While you have what I've just described, I would say is a fixed situation, while you have a dynamic situation in the AI world, very quick improving and evolutionary system that is creating always programs and algorithms that are quicker, that are more performant, and then it is very difficult to run after this type of system unless you create an algorithm that is so quick to regulate the algorithm.
Exactly.
So we really need now to think how we can control through the algorithm something that we won't be able to regulate ever. Thank you.
All right. So, wow, thank you. Absolutely a wonderful conversation. Thank you, Valentine. Thank you, Francesco. Thank you, Giorgio. I want to open the floor also to the students. Because when I look at people that are below 30, I know that your future is going to be impacted in ways that you can't imagine. The current evolution. So let me say, well, I basically let's say I agree very much with Valentine, and there's some disagreement with Francesco.
And I completely disagree with him.
No, actually, I was about to say something that is related to what you said. First of all, I'm almost certain that we're going to go into a situation where we're going to have a form of AI police. So you're going to have systems that are going to operate at the same level of other systems to do what police work is supposed to be. In every society, when you have a power, you need to have a counterpower. And so the accountability of a machine is very difficult to think of a human interacting with a machine in the ways that we are kind of elaborating right now. No? But I don't want to indulge into that because it will be a generous conversation. I want to focus a little bit more on what Valentine was saying and basically the implications of what Francesco was saying. No? First of all, it doesn't matter that something is possible, right? I mean, the fact that some countries might develop artificial intelligence that don't abide to specific standards, it's irrelevant. Because the history of humanity is made of a group of people that take decisions that are different, reflecting different groups. So the fact that something might be legal in a country and illegal in another, it's a way of the world. We have always been in that situation, but we always have to push forward with a larger vision. If you look at the history of humanity, it's a struggle we know better than ever. What the struggle it's been lately. If you think about the pandemic, you think about the war in Russia and whatnot, but that doesn't mean that we have to lose sight of what humanity has achieved. So one of the things we have achieved is, for example, the Declaration of Human Rights. Now, for me, it's just a simple technical problem to say that any AI applications that is designed should be compared, should be tested against existing human rights. If there's a danger of an artificial intelligence to not being able to respond to these values, then it simply should not be developed. So let me talk about the business model of the competition. Imagine you go back in time to the 60s and 70s when the automobile became a real industry. After the Second World War, of course, there was this really the booming of the investments in personal mobility and whatnot. Even back then, there were people that were saying, think what you're doing, there's negative consequences what you're doing. No? Imagine another group, a minority group, that said, well, I'm not going to invest in a technology that is using fossil fuels, I'm going to invest in alternative forms of energy, like electric cars. There were already people developing electric cars. Yeah. Actually, the wife of an American president was one of the first person to have an electric car. Yeah. Now, who's been smartest in the history of with the great knowledge that we have acquired about negative consequences of investing in one form of energy in something that cannot be replaced, in something that has all these negative consequences, compared to someone that said, well, I think you're going to invest and take time to invest in something that is safer. So you can either compete to design the faster car, or you can compete to design the safest car. And for me, the safest car will always win over the fastest car. I don't know if someone is designing something that's faster because my value is to protect life. So if my value system is based on human rights, I might well take my time to develop AI. I might take 20 more years. There's no urgency or competition with the market because technological innovation has been educated to the great danger of risks. So I embrace the fact that we're trying to hyper-regulate something that we don't understand because the consequences are still not clear. There's no urgency other than commercial interest in an acceleration that is based on an old model which has everything, disregard and dismantle what doesn't work or what has consequences based on and has strong consequences. That model might have been reasonable when the scientific paradigm wasn't tested yet. We didn't have the experience that we have now, but now we have enough experience in history on the possible long-term consequences of technology that is developed without ethical consideration. So I would say that we should heavily regulate artificial intelligence, even at the risk of hyper-regulation until we don't understand the consequences, until a model expands that has a more balanced view of what artificial intelligence is doing. Now, I respond with an engineer that is with whom I was talking about artificial intelligence. And this person is someone that knows really well. Is the managing director of one of the biggest organizations in the world for standards. No? And the thing is, if you talk to an engineer, the engineer is interested not so much in endorsing one product on another. If you give an engineer a problem, the engineer will work creatively to solve that problem. If I tell them, design the fastest machine with disregard for the pilot, that's what they're going to do. If you tell them, design the safest machine with certain criteria, that's what they're going to do. Technology is driven by values. Values is telling to engineers that are working with technology what kind of technology you want to be built. So I want to build the safest car, not the fastest car. And engineers will work hard on building the fastest car. And then that ecosystem will compete with whoever wants to design the fastest car. But in long term, we have to continue to embrace the other value systems that will work so hard with humanity. We have to work on the defense of human rights. We have to work on the inequality. We have to work on the fact that it's not possible that a minority of people is exploiting all the resources of the world. And a fast-paced elaboration of artificial intelligence without these considerations will lead to the enhancement of this scale. You will have people that are going to get incredibly more rich. If there is an economic gap, trust me, one of the real danger of artificial intelligence is forget basics. We're going to go to another scale of economic gap between a minority and a majority. So I welcome that someone else is doing something else. We live in a world where someone is still communicating. So does it mean that we have to change the way in which we believe and we are trying to advance humanity? Well, one thing I agree with you all and with Valentine specifically is diplomacy is the key element. The dangers that are posed by artificial intelligence are fair. Everybody that deals with artificial intelligence understands negative consequences. So once you find that baseline of common risks, I think that's already a good basis for diplomacy. While you can also find areas of shared interest. For example, if you have an electromagnetic event, earthquakes, disaster mitigation, healthcare, those are all areas of expertise where the interests are shared. You can start by adapting limitations that are global, proceed on the basis of risk for humanity, and you can invest in shared problems where it doesn't matter what the political spectrum or the geopolitical dimensions. So I embrace the interaction, but I'm not challenged or feel pressured by the fact that China might go and design a face recognition system that allows me to save a fraction of a second going through turnstile without having to what? Because I can do that with my mobile. Why do you need to see my identity to find the technical solution? Because it is a technical problem. Tell to the engineer what could we achieve and in under what conditions, and they will do it. That's how technology innovation works. I think we have to be fair with time to everybody, but exactly. But I want to give the opportunity to students to have their questions or remarks or anybody else. Yes.
Where are you from?
South Korea.
Okay, almost.
Almost. So, while listening to you talking about it, since I realized that I stand at the opposite point of view. So I'm very critical to AI. And my question is, I don't think we can avoid the singularity. And because AI technology should be used for humanity. And in some cases, we have to use AI technology for humanity in a hurry. For example, right now we have this brain computer interface technology to help the paralyzed people. It is a combination of a machine and human to help humanity. In cases of, for example, that brain damage people or dementia, the technology of AI technology is ability, this machine with artificial intelligence capability can help such people. In such case, then there's the boundary between humanity and machine is become blurred in a way. And in some way we will use such technology, and in such case it has to be connected to some kind of other computer for the person's house. Then in the near future after that, it will be impossible to stop, like for example, mind learning, regulation. What do you think about that?
Okay. So first of all, I don't think
There are three questions actually.
Spreading what was said, there is a trade-off between innovation and the principle of legal certainty, because technology and the speed of technology is to be embedded in the legal framework that is existing.
Yes.
But he said that, like in provocative sentence, that technology and artificial intelligence has to create and elaborate its legal framework that is as strict as artificial intelligence. But does European Union, for example, adopted regulatory sandboxes or experimental framework, experimental? Is it that possible, or it's we have to wait that artificial intelligence creates its own framework?
Oh no, but otherwise
Okay, you
want to, because then you blur the. I'll be very quick with each one because it's a very good exercise. So first of all, I believe we are on the same side. I don't know why you have the impression we're on a different side. If you remember what I said about my definition of it's very much about augmentation of the human, right? And the augmentation literally means what normally always meant. I wear glasses if I need glasses, right? So the technology is always been designed to work on human limitations with all different qualities of limitations that you might talk about. So I absolutely embrace the idea of tech interacting with the body and the boundaries of technology and the body to change. Actually, it's been done for a long time. Pacemakers, just think, this is evident. What I question is replacing humanity, right? Cloning qualities of humanity when it's not needed. Let's put it this way. Why should I try to create a clone, mechanical clone of you? Why do I need that? Why does technology have to work towards that end? Why should we design a technology that allows humanity to work as a collective society? Well, that's what technology has been doing. Technology is slowly eroding the singularity of the human. So that's the singularity I'm interested in. So I'm not against the evolution of technology and the wonderful opportunities that are given based on limitations. What I'm against is simply the experimenting without creating the boundaries of that experimentation. I very much talked about cloning. Cloning, of course, there's positive uses that might allow the investigation of the field of genetics for the purpose that as I said, for the improvement of individuals that have different physical qualities. So I don't see the intentional contradiction. I'm simply saying is that it should happen as it happens in medicine, that specific forms of research are heavily ethically regulated and that provide specific ethical guidelines. Regarding your comments, so the fact that it cannot, you're afraid that we cannot regulate.
Yeah, but I know that in European Union, the regulatory sandboxes and experimental regulation is they work, or we have to experiment another way to regulate artificial intelligence whose speed is quicker than our.
Yeah. So what happened historically is that there was something. If you think about the evolution of humanity, right? It's very normal. We experience with something, and then you gain the knowledge from your experience. No? So you remember the paradigm until a few years ago. It was very common to say technology innovates a lot faster than regulation can. You remember it was the perception was like regulation cannot keep up with innovation. Innovation is always faster than regulation. Actually, with artificial intelligence, it was kind of interesting because given the danger of artificial intelligence and our experience based on previous mistakes, we understood, well, we need better to engage this before it was even real. The European Commission started to work on artificial intelligence when the broad understanding of it was none. I remember, I saw 10 years ago, I was talking about artificial intelligence. People didn't know. It wasn't only movies, there wasn't. You look at how much is happening in the past 5 years. I would say that regulation is going the fastest it has ever been in regulating a technology that is emerging very quickly. Now, I may agree with you that technology might outpace again the regulating, but we're very smart because now we know that, if you think of the police, if the thieves are using a car, the police is using a car, if they're using a plane, they have a plane. I mean, the technology can be used by in analysis.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I share many of your. They need to put it. I share many of your content regarding the fact that we should set a set of values that are very global and very important to be followed. But I want to also point to you the Declaration of Human Rights has never been accepted by all the different nations.
Yeah.
And it's not really considered to be a rule that everybody has to abide. So that's what I'm saying. I'm telling
We need another must go. Valentine, you wanted to say something in 1 minute. I had to say something in 15 minutes, but I want, and you also.
Oh, yes, it's okay.
It's simply that we had initially planned to have a final comments from. I mean, Francesco made this his comments, and I think that Francesco Grillo, you have the right to respond, and Valentine as well to some of the comments raised by the rest. I'm sorry, I will have to leave afterwards. I have a meeting at 4 my time here afterwards in another building.
So let's take your question, and then I will let Francesco Grillo.
No, but it's valid.
I think Carolina has to leave in about 4 minutes. So if that's okay, just a very one short 1 minute, and then Carolina can wrap up, or else she's going to leave without wrapping up.
Okay, then I guess I'll first I want to thank everybody for devoting their time to be here. different personality backgrounds, professional experts, right? Just elaborate on what Francesco was saying about AI and cloning, right? What would be the incentive to clone, right? It would be a genetic advantage, perhaps, right? Whether it's to do with our intellectual quotient or our physical ability, right? But then you have to ask yourself, the main ethical and like philosophical considerations for AI, to me personally, is the idea that we have two perspectives. We have the short term and we have the long term, right? Short term is the selling point. That's the proposition where everybody's like, oh yeah, AI, this is going to be the innovation, this is going to be the evolution of humankind. However, in the long term, is where we have to consider things like the algorithm, we have to consider the definitions, we have to consider the laws that we make, because the laws, as mentioned, are precise and they concern the public, right? So then the question is, who's making those laws? And if they're making those laws, how are we able to make it so that essentially AI doesn't fall in the wrong hands? Because it's two paths. There's the utopian, equal, peaceful, serene, green, healthy world, and then there's the communist totalitarian dictatorship, a dystopian future, right? And that's where I guess the two sides of the concern for AI revolves around, when it's really a matter of who's in charge, because eventually AI is going to be in charge, and we have to make sure that whoever coded that AI had good intentions, right? Okay.
So let me some answer so that I can sum up, because I don't think I really hear you. Yeah. You basically forget something in my view. Yeah. For some reason, people forget that regulation is a form of innovation. Right. The reason that law is not the same, and it's not that we are using the law of the 100 years ago. Law are always evolving in society. They are a form of innovation. Now, I just want to give the same equal dignity to law as it's supposed to be. As a form of innovation, law is constantly negotiated because society changes continuously. The question change, the direction change. So I don't understand why people understand law as in juxtaposition with innovation. Law, it's innovation. If it wasn't, it would be the Bible, right? Thankfully, it's not the Bible, according to me. We have institutions that are constantly legislating, innovating, because they're responding to contemporary forms of change, right? So understand that law can be understood as a form of innovation, equally possible, equally necessary as technological innovation. So that's my short answer to you. Cloning, it's a much longer answer. And if you understood, the question was about the legislation and limitation of the legislations, and then it was asking something a little bit more specific about cloning and the function of cloning and the two utopian regimes of the Green Garden of Eden and the total authoritarian dystopian future where machine controls humanity.
Also, one like 10 seconds.
No, that's right. We will have more opportunities. All right, so Valentine and then Francesco, and then we close Carolina. All right.
Okay, so I'm going to respect my 1 minute time out of respect, and I'd love to hear Carolina's reply as well. I'm sorry, I'm going to be very direct with the people in the room. These are very academic discussions, very theoretical discussions. AI is affecting people's human rights right now. AI is not, we can talk about cloning humans in the future, maybe in 25 years. But what's happening right now, some students are being denied education, jobs. Some people are staying in jail longer than others. So I think regulation is one way, even if it's imperfect, even if it's a risk management framework, maybe if it doesn't protect human rights as much as some people would want to, it is urgent and important to adopt laws right now. They will then follow through into regulations. We need to ensure proper participation from civil society organizations and NGOs to make sure, as the last commentator was making, that we have proper democratic participation in the shaping of those laws and shaping how those laws will be applied by the judicial system. Also, just very, very quickly, I'm hearing a lot about regulating AI. I just want to remind, for example, in Bill C-27, we're not regulating AI, we are regulating the people who develop AI. We're regulating the people who invest into AI. We're regulating the people who operate AI systems. We are operating HR managers who will make the choice, and board administrators who choose to buy a certain AI using system for their management, for corruption prevention, for example. So we are regulating people, not AI systems. That's extremely important. The data is originating from all over the world. People in horrible conditions are contributing to annotating those large language models, which are part of the AI systems. Regulation, in my opinion, is urgent and critical.
All right. I think we should close because we can continue.
Absolutely.
But this was thank you, Caroline. Thank you, Valentine. Thank you.
Can I say very shortly?
We as a host, we can call you later because
we have to go. I think well, yes.
Yeah, we are like 30 minutes.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Okay, so
thank you very much. We will have more for this campaign.
I think there's a path. I mean, and if I have to sort of, there's some dots. I mean, there's some very strong emphasis in your book, Francesco, about risk, and not just in the way the EUA Act is framing risk. Francesco Grillo is also talked about risk, but from a very different perspective. And Valentine here has brought in, I mean, and also with the experience of Canada and how they are using risk, but not just. And as a governance scholar, I think that we have to think about the values in risk and not just think of this management models around risk, but also bring in why these technologies are evolving in the way they are and what is the purpose behind them all and why should we steer them in the direction that we want. But anyway, this is a big reflection on some common points I found, and you will have the closing remarks, Francesco and Francesco, as you are there in the lovely presence of your Roman audience.
Right. So thank you. I want to thank Francesco.
Thanks a lot.
For kind of coordinating this and also the team of Vision. So please, Clara, and remind me your names. Margherita and Georgia, thank you very much. On my side, there's Adelia, that has been incredibly helpful, and I'm looking forward to continue the conversation. You all. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Bye, Valentine. Bye, Carol.